watching the digital age. I'm Jim Zirin. James Goodale is off this week. The President of the United States wants Saddam Hussein to be tried by the Iraqi people for crimes which, if proved, would constitute violations of international humanitarian law. What will this trial look like? Who will be the prosecutors? Who will be defense counsel? The witnesses? Indeed, who will be the judges? What will be the role of the media? Will the media turn the trial into a media circus? All these are important questions to be answered, but most importantly, will the trial of Saddam Hussein be a fair trial? With us this evening to discuss this issue is a distinguished international lawyer and educator. Anne-Marie Slaughter is the Dean of the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs at Princeton University. She has written a book called A New World Order. New World Order treats the globalization of the rule of law. Dean Slaughter, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you have written an op-ed piece in the Washington Post where you say that you prefer a trial by the Iraqi people to a trial by an international tribunal.
I think that's right. The idea of international criminal law is to make it possible, where possible, for a people to try those who have perpetrated crimes against them. So where a national justice system has the capacity to try a leader who has committed crimes against its own people, that's where we ought to start.
Now, has any war criminal in history ever been tried by his own people? Nuremberg defendants weren't, Eichmann wasn't, Pol Pot wasn't, Pinochet wasn't?
I think it's certainly true that the cases in which leaders have escaped trial, certainly at the hands of their own people, and often trial at all, as in the case of Pol Pot, outnumber those where individuals have been brought to trial. But of course, there were many former Nazis who were tried, not at Nuremberg, but under the occupation and by the Germans themselves after World War II. There are similarly in Rwanda, Rwandans who are perpetrating the genocide who are being tried in Rwanda. So there is precedent. There's no precedent for the top leaders. Generally, there's either an amnesty, or as there was in Argentina, or of course the leader is either killed or not in the country. So this is a first.
But what is the appearance of fairness in having the victims or the families of the victims try their oppressor?
Well, there's a clear tension between the desire to see justice done in the place where the injustice was committed and where the victims have a chance to participate, as in, say, the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and the desire to see justice done in a way that's legitimate worldwide. And the way you ensure that it's an internationally fair trial is to remove it and put it, say, in The Hague, but then that makes it less important and less powerful as a political event for the individuals. So Saddam Hussein's trial has to balance those two tensions. There has to be enough international participation and scrutiny to ensure that it is fair according to international standards, but the Iraqi people have to feel that they are participating in bringing to justice someone who brutalized them for decades.
And what will the trial look like? Will it be a jury?
It won't be a jury.
Will it be one judge? 3 judges? How will it work?
There's lots of uncertainty, but the one thing we can be absolutely certain of, there will not be a jury. The statute that the Iraqi Governing Council passed provides for panels of 5 judges each. So you'll have a 5-judge panel. That statute says they can be Iraqi or they can also be international. So in theory, you could see a judge, say, of 3 Iraqis and an Iranian and a Kuwaiti to take 2 countries that were also victims of Saddam Hussein. Or you could have a Norwegian and someone else from an Arab country. In practice, it looks like the Iraqis are going to stick to Iraqi judges, and there's quite a lot of dispute about that, but there will be 5 judge panels.
Is it believed that the Iraqis have the juridical expertise to give us 5 judges who could give us the appearance of a fair trial?
Well, in some sense, we won't know until we see the trial. There certainly are many judges who, Iraqi judges, who argue that they were not part of Saddam's justice system. He used special courts for much of the worst of his regime, who have not been active, but who are trained and sophisticated and capable of doing this. So says the Iraqi Governing Council, and given what we know of Iraq historically, that's plausible. On the other hand, they're talking about trying 100 to 200 members of the Ba'athist regime. That's an enormous undertaking in terms of legal resources and judicial resources. They're going to need a lot of international help. I think it's likely, actually, that over time they'd do well to have some international judges and prosecutors as well.
Now, in cases of this kind, prosecutors often like to start with the lower level perpetrators and then work their way up to the higher-ups, possibly turning the lower level criminals against their superiors or against their partners in crime. Do you see that kind of approach in Iraq, where they start perhaps with the people actually responsible for the gassing of the Kurds, for example?
I do.
And then working their way up the chain of command?
I do, although I doubt they're going to have too much trouble turning the defendants. But the current prosecutor, Prosecutor Chalabi, who is related to the Chalabi on the Governing Council, has already announced that the first defendant will be the man they call Chemical Ali, the man who was directly responsible for the gassing of the Kurds in the late 1980s. And they have a very good case against him, a case that was actually built in part by Iraqi exiles in the early 1990s who were determined to document the crimes of Saddam Hussein. They have him in custody. They've had him in custody for longer than they've had Saddam Hussein. They'll start with that trial in part, I think, to broadcast the full horrors of what Saddam's regime was capable of in a very graphic way. They might then choose others who were in a position similar to Chemical Ali before turning to Saddam Hussein himself. Although they can't wait too long because they've got him in the dock, and at some point he's obviously the main attraction for the Iraqi people.
Will the trials be conducted in tandem or simultaneously?
They can be in tandem. The provision, again, for these panels is much like our own Court of Appeals. We have 3 judge panels, and you can have those panels sitting concurrently. If they're really going to try 100 to 200 members of the regime, they'd better do it concurrently, or this could be a 10 to 20-year operation.
Now, how long would such a trial last?
It's going to be, that's hard to say. And again, there's the same tension between you want a fair trial, so you want to be very careful in amassing your evidence and putting on your witnesses and giving the defendant all the opportunities possible to challenge the witnesses. But then you're looking at something like Milosevic, where we're looking at 3 years and no end in sight. If you imagine that across the board, this could be disastrous for a new Iraqi government. So there's an incentive to be careful for legitimacy purposes, but there's also an incentive to get this underway and over to start a new government. They're going to have to balance that one out, and they're going to have to do it in the public eye.
Now, this concurrent trial, perhaps, of the top 50 to 100 Baathists would not involve Saddam Hussein, would it? He would be the pièce de la résistance,
well,
so saved for the end, isn't that right?
Well, you can imagine several strategies. I mean, you could imagine, let's get everybody else out of the way and then him. Now, in part, we don't know what health he's in. I'm not sure they want him hanging out without having been tried for that long a time, as long as anyone might be loyal to him. There's security risks. So you might imagine an alternative would be to try 3 or 4 of his top henchmen, and then to try him while you've got some sort of lower level trials going on concurrently that won't take much attention away. Once his trial is done, you'd finish with the other higher ups.
And suppose one of the henchmen wants to call Saddam Hussein as a witness. And to say that guy, he wasn't one of my henchmen in any of the criminal stuff. He was doing health, education, and welfare.
You know, those are the question, the imponderables at this point. Obviously, in an American criminal trial, you could expect that. It's hard for me to imagine that they're going to let Saddam Hussein testify, or if they are, that will guarantee that he is probably tried pretty quickly, because you're not going to want him appearing repeatedly in other people's trials. But those are very big questions, and we don't have precedent. They certainly don't have precedent. But once again, you can imagine that a lower-level defendant, as indeed we're seeing in some of the Guantanamo cases, is going to say, I need to call him to make clear my own role. And then that's what justice appears to demand. Politics makes that tricky. How are they going to come down?
The issue of witnesses is a very interesting one. For example, suppose Saddam in his trial decides to call George H. Bush or Rumsfeld or even George W. Bush, and ask them about CIA involvement in the use of chemical and biological weapons in the 90s.
Right.
You know, what happens if he does this, and what happens if they decline to appear?
Well, George W. Bush, let's start with that one.
Right.
It's a great question. George W. Bush, I think, will simply claim, and not while in office, and there's plenty of precedent for that, so that issue won't be on the table immediately. We don't know how long he'll still be in office. Others who are not in office, certainly his father, or in lower-level office, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, who would be testifying about things that happened in the 1980s. That's much harder to resist, and in the precedents we have, where Milosevic has asked people like Wes Clark to testify or Clinton to testify, they have made arrangements for that testimony to be taken, although not necessarily in open court. So there, again, it's going to be very tricky for the U.S. government, which absolutely wants these trials to be as legitimate as possible, because the audience is not just Iraq. The audience is all of the Muslim world, and indeed the world in general. But at the same time, of course, is not going to be anxious to have our own officials deposed or cross-examined about U.S. support of the Saddam regime earlier on. It's a minefield.
Yes. Now, our Constitution says that a criminal defendant has the right to compel the appearance of witnesses in his behalf. And if so, he goes to the clerk of the court and gets a subpoena, and the marshal serves the subpoena, and if the witness doesn't want to appear, the witness can be held in contempt and, in extreme circumstances, jailed.
Right.
Now, what happens under international law? I mean, suppose Saddam says he wants Secretary Rumsfeld, and Rumsfeld says he's too busy. He has too many things on his mind. What happens? I mean, what can they do to Rumsfeld? What can they do to the United States?
Well, of course, I suppose they could block his visa. So if he wants to go back to Iraq, I mean, there are some diplomatic measures they could take. But the real compulsion in international law, and this is really Iraqi law that's using international law, is the force of public opinion and politics, so that if we are there saying, you know, we want a democratic Iraq, we want a rights regarding Iraq, we want a strong Iraqi judicial system, we went to war for this, and then Rumsfeld says, oh yes, but I won't testify, that looks like the rule of law applies to everyone but us. And that is exactly the opposite of the message we want to be sending to the larger Muslim and Islamic world. So there is compulsion there. It's just not the ordinary kind of judicial compulsion.
It's moral suasion, but then do you give...
And political calculation.
Yes, but then do you give the Iraqi court carte blanche to decide who shall testify and who won't testify?
No, and I would imagine at that point the U.S. government is playing multiple roles, but let's assume that this trial will take place after the U.S. is not actively in a political capacity in Iraq, even if we still have our troops in. Then what's likely to happen is negotiation between the Iraqi government, the new Iraqi government, and our State Department, our Justice Department, about sort of the terms on which U.S. witnesses, high-level witnesses, can be made available to the Iraqi tribunal, and I'm sure that will include a limit on the number of witnesses, the ways in which they can be cross-examined, the kinds of testimony they can be asked to give. So we won't see those negotiations, but if any U.S. witnesses are going to testify, it'll be in that context.
Yes. Now, our Justice Department has announced that it is dispatching a phalanx of 50 DOJ, Department of Justice lawyers to Iraq to participate in mounting the case.
Absolutely.
I think 10 recently went to Iraq and are there even as we speak.
I think that's right. There's a small group, the vanguard.
The vanguard of the phalanx.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, I mean, is that going to make it look like a U.S. put-up job? That here we are, we invade a country, and then we send our lawyers to put their leaders on trial?
It could, if that's the only help they get. The statute envisages lots of international assistance, and if I were the Justice Department right now, I would be negotiating to have other countries send in their help, and also non-governmental human rights organizations to send lawyers and prosecutors and investigators, as indeed they have with all the international tribunals. There's an entire sort of infrastructure, international criminal justice SWAT teams, if you want to think about it that way, out there ready and willing to provide help. Groups like Human Rights Watch or Human Rights First in this country and in other countries. If the U.S. team is part of an entire phalanx of international lawyers from many different countries, I think that's fine. If it's only U.S. lawyers, and then you get these issues of, well, a high-level Iraqi defendant calls an American witness, and that witness cannot be produced, and you know that the American lawyers are there behind the scenes, that's going to be a political problem.
Well, I also wonder about international participation on the defense side. Former United States Attorney General Ramsey Clark, now a prominent defense lawyer, has weighed in, and he said he would like to go to Iraq and defend Saddam Hussein. Now, of course, Ramsey Clark, when Saddam Hussein was in power, said that the only regime change we need in Iraq is the only regime change we need is the regime change in November to oust George Bush. So his views are well known. Do you see room for participation of defense counsel from other countries, and how does that weigh in the mix?
That one's tricky. I don't see Ramsey Clark. That's going to make matters so much more complicated in every dimension, and it, of course, will inject a note of U.S. partisan politics in this, which has really no place. There again, though, I don't know what Iraqi is willing to defend him. He clearly does need defense. It might be there that you'd want a team of defense lawyers who included, I'd say, some non-Americans, maybe again from Europe, from other Muslim countries, with Iraqi participation, who could coordinate his defense. But it's going to be brave and dedicated individuals dedicated to the norm of equal justice, independent of politics, who will volunteer.
Now, what about the media? I mean, this promises to be the mother of trials. Is Al Jazeera going to be there? Is it going to be televised? Will it be gavel-to-gavel coverage? This will make the O.J. Simpson case look like back-page news.
Well, there again, there's going to be a big tension in terms of what kind of evidence is actually presented. And there, the new Iraqi government might itself be concerned about the evidence presented in terms of fingering others who may not yet be in custody, charges that against people who are now in the government. So it's not just a U.S. issue, it's also an Iraqi issue. My guess is they will certainly make provision for what we would call in-camera presentation of evidence out of the public eye. The degree to which they're willing to allow televisions in the courtroom, there again, that's an issue of first impression in the Islamic world. Now, what we know is that cable TV is sort of the leading form of entertainment, and so if they have satellite channel, sort of special channels, then you could imagine a lot of coverage. But that's anybody's guess. We don't have any insight, and they've certainly never done anything like that.
Yes. Now, you argued in your Washington Post article against trial by an international tribunal a la Milosevic.
Right.
And of course, Milosevic has pretty much succeeded in representing himself and turning it into a platform for endless tirades
Yes.
against his accusers. And potentially Saddam could do exactly the same thing. Now, is it really so paternalistic to have someone who's alleged to be a war criminal, someone who committed genocide, someone who invaded another country, violated international laws as it's understood, generally understood? Does it do so much violence to the body politic to have him tried before an international tribunal?
I think so, unless the body politic prefers it that way. And there are certainly cases in which, a new government says, we don't want the burden of having to try this individual. We'd be happy to have him out of there. But in general, it should be the people, if they want to, who have the power and the right to bring a perpetrator to justice. I mean, if you just think about it, as unimaginable as it may seem from the U.S. point of view, imagine, in a particular state of the United States, or God forbid, the federal government, someone who had really committed crimes against us, and then he's going to be tried in The Hague by foreign judges. I mean, that really is a statement that the polity is not capable of righting the wrongs done to it, which is true in some cases, and some transitional governments, as I said, are very fragile. But where a government really seems ready and willing to do this, this is the right course. It's also the plan of the International Criminal Court, which provides for national courts trying war criminals in every case where they are capable and willing. And only if they're not capable or not willing would jurisdiction go to The Hague.
Well, of course, there is the concern about the politicization of the trial. I mean, there's an Egyptian-born international lawyer, Mr. Sharif Bassiouni.
Yes.
You know his statement where he said, we didn't find weapons of mass destruction. We want to justify our invasion of Iraq, so we put Saddam Hussein on trial, prove he's a Nazi, and then we can wash our hands of the whole business. Isn't this trial instinct with the potential for that kind of an argument in the Arab world?
I think that's, of course, but so too are there arguments about Al-Qaeda not being responsible for the Twin Towers. I mean, we can't control what conspiracy theorists are going to say, or what those who see the United States' evil hand in everything are going to say. But the fact is, he is a perpetrator of crimes against humanity, at least according to all the evidence we have. Whether or not that was reason enough to go to war is a separate question from the fact that he did commit those crimes. His victims are the Iraqi people, and we have every incentive to support the Iraqis in trying him. I think Bassiouni's remark implies that if we weren't there, they wouldn't want to try him. And that just seems inconceivable to me.
Just a word about the International Criminal Court, which in your article you said would be the alternative. Does the International Criminal Court have jurisdiction or potential jurisdiction over the trial of Saddam Hussein?
No, not as it's constituted. It was only established in 2003. It has jurisdiction only from crimes committed from 2002 on. I'm sorry, it was established in 2002, and it does not have jurisdiction over these crimes. Iraq was not a signatory to the Treaty of Rome, so it has no power over Saddam unless it were granted power by the Security Council. You can imagine a whole nother scenario where we had gone to war with a second Security Council resolution. We had gone with a coalition under UN auspices. We had captured Saddam Hussein, and the UN Security Council said, all right, we want to authorize an international tribunal to try him, and the Iraqis were willing to have him be tried by an international tribunal. Then you could have taken the judges who are on the International Criminal Court and constituted them as a sort of special ad hoc tribunal for Saddam Hussein, but not as the formal International Criminal Court. It's a legal distinction.
That is the regime that applies to the Milosevic case, is it not? I mean, it's an ad hoc tribunal.
It's an ad hoc tribunal created for all crimes committed in the former Yugoslavia. But yes, I mean, that's exactly, it was the Security Council who said, you know, we've authorized the use of force in Bosnia, we authorized a tribunal to try the perpetrators of crimes there.
But the United States would have to agree to the Security Council resolution, and the United States doesn't like the International Criminal Court. It's not a signatory.
That's right.
It feels to be giving up jurisdiction.
Right. Although,
So
as I said, the irony
hurdles.
is that the U.S. position that Iraq should do this is the position that the treaty that establishes the International Criminal Court takes. It does, if this were under the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, Iraq would still get first crack, and everything in that treaty says you try to help the Iraqis do it, and as I said before, only if they're unable or unwilling. So ironically, even though we would not dream of supporting the International Criminal Court at this point, we are taking exactly the same position that the drafters of the Treaty of Rome, and we participated in those negotiations, took about domestic first, international only if you can't do it domestically.
But nonetheless, the expertise of the International Criminal Court is fourfold: war crimes, genocide, crimes against humanity, invading another country. These are all things that Saddam Hussein arguably did.
Yes.
And most certainly did. Now the question is, aren't they the body that is in the best position to adjudicate this case because of the expertise involved?
I don't think so. I think expertise here is one factor, but justice really demands the participation, I think, of the representatives of the victims. I mean, it's like any crime. I mean, can you imagine saying, well, the crime was committed in a state? I mean, all our criminal law is state law, not federal law, not all, but the primary crimes, precisely because we believe that the government that represents those who were victimized and in the place that it was done, in the context that it was done, ought to be the instrument of justice, if possible. And so, yes, there may be less expertise, but I think with the addition of international help of all kinds, there's no reason to assume the Iraqis can't do it themselves. And to take it away from them is to deny them one of the major functions of a democratic government, just when we are saying to them, we want you to make it as a young democracy, as a rights-regarding government.
Even though we're holding him as a prisoner of war, so-called, and prisoners of war classically are not tried by the country where they're held prisoner.
Yes,
isn't that right?
I think the answer there is the United States forces that are holding him said that they were treating him as a prisoner of war, largely to satisfy human rights groups who are concerned about the standard of his treatment. And what we wanted to say is we are abiding by the Geneva Convention. We fought a war. We captured him. We're giving him that treatment. The Iraqi people, the governing council, was not consulted. And from their point of view, he is not a prisoner of war. So he may be being held as a prisoner of war, but he will then be turned over to his government, who then has the power to try him as a criminal.
Okay, time to wrap up.
Okay.
Anne-Marie Slaughter, I ask you the question, can Saddam Hussein get a fair trial in Iraq by the Iraqi people?
We will see. There's a good chance with enough help.
Anne-Marie Slaughter, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for being with us. Tune in next week for more on the digital age. I'm Jim Zirin. Good night.